Ready? Good evening and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment. This evening we have 5 minor variance applications. It is 6:30 and I will call this meeting to order. I will remind the committee of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Note that none are noted. Adoption of the minutes of previous meetings. That includes the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September the 19th, 2024. Everyone's had opportunity to peruse those minutes. There are no errors or omissions. I will need a mover and seconder for the following: that the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on September the 19th, 2024 be approved as presented. Deputy Mayor Weiser, Committee Member Weiser, and Committee Member Emerson. Second, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the first minor variance application is A-18/24 Wall 9 Oak Street. The purpose of this variance is to grant relief from section 4.34.1 to permit a driveway that occupies a maximum of 54% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required. The increased driveway width is intended to accommodate the off-street parking requirement for the existing semi-detached dwelling and future interior additional residential unit. The subject lands are located at 9 Oak Street, west side, south of Fulton Street in the village of Vienna. The effect of this variance will be to accommodate a larger driveway to the existing semi-detached dwelling with a 1 future interior additional residential unit that exceeds the maximum front yard coverage requirement. At this point, we'll entertain the staff presentation. That's report DS 7824 by Margaret Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding the minor variance A-18/24 1000381098 Ontario Inc. Wall 9 Oak Street. Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The report before you submitted by 1000381098 Ontario Inc. Submitted a minor variance for 9 Oak Street. The purpose and the effect has already been read aloud. The Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance to the zoning bylaw. The planner's memorandum is dated October 29th, and it is attached to the report. It outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and the variances required for compliance. Municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria to grant relief from section 4.34.1 of the zoning bylaw to permit a driveway that occupies a maximum of 54% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required. So the recommendation is before you. I will just note that I should have said at the beginning, we do have Christian from Arcadis online, that if we do have questions regarding any of the memos for the Committee of Adjustment reports, he is available as well. But I will leave it with you, Mr. Chair, for proceeding through the agenda.
All right, thank you very much. Is, by your estimation, is the applicant or agent present who wishes to make a presentation?
Not that I am aware of.
All right. Moving on with public submissions and public participation. Would note that there are 3 pieces of correspondence associated with this file. I hope council or the committee has had opportunity to review it. I'm going to ask now if there's anyone in the public who wishes to participate.
Do I speak up now?
Yes, this is the time, Wendy.
Sorry. I would like to speak if I may, please.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. I just wanted to say that not so very long ago, a neighbor said to me that a man can do what he wants with his own property. And while I don't disagree with that fully, I do have a problem with that. As I said to him, a man can do what he wants with his own property, as long as what he does isn't to the detriment of the people that he may impact around him. So I'm not adverse to Mr. Wall building his homes there. He has a right to do that. But what I would say is, and I'm hoping that council has indeed walked down or driven down Oak Street and is familiar with how narrow the street is. Actually, council referred to how narrow it is in a previous meeting when they were talking about the sidewalks. And a reference was made to using Elm Street because there is a sidewalk there. There's no sidewalk on Oak Street. It is very narrow. The proximity of the driveways to the corner is significant. Also, there's a new driveway there as well. Adding additional vehicles to the homes, while I understand it, one can't limit, though one can approve of the additional width, one can't limit the number of vehicles someone can actually put into their driveway if they choose to, unless it's reported to bylaw. But my understanding is that if they can fit 6 cars in, they will fit 6 cars in. And I'm not speaking to the people living there at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that anyone can choose to do that. So we have little children that walk up Oak Street to go to the school bus that they access across from the Lions Center on Fulton Street. No sidewalk, so parents walk with them, of course. We have another person that uses a scooter to access the mailbox and uses it on Fulton Street. And we have regular people walking their dogs. And I would suggest that making it wider and increasing the actual number of cars that is there will put at risk the people coming around the corner from Fulton to Oak, since being able to see clearly what you're encountering coming up the road is not something that's easy to do when you're going around that corner. So you could be on a child and not realize you're on that child before you're there, or even a person walking down the street. It's a heavily used, heavily trafficked street. Living just behind it, one is aware of that, and people living on it are also aware of it. I would say the other thing that I'm concerned about is, again, if you've seen the location of the home, we live at the top of the hill and it's like a ravine. So the hill goes down and goes down onto the road. Unless there's been an engineer involved and they've mitigated the runoff of the water, I would suggest that what happens is the rain naturally goes down that hill onto the street and into a neighbor's yard. The danger is that with it, not having any vegetation on the soil and taking up the room where the vegetation would normally be, because there's very little room left on each side once the driveway goes there, will mean that the topsoil will flow quite quickly down across the road. That becomes a potential danger for people walking or driving because it becomes mud. Not to mention in the winter, the water again coming down that hill. I'm wondering who's going to ensure that when it puddles at the bottom, as it does, who's going to ensure that the ice is mitigated in terms of the danger to people walking and driving. I would also suggest that to Mr. Wall, that as a developer, he hasn't been cognizant and using the rules in terms of ensuring safety to the people that work in those buildings. That makes one concerned about being a good neighbor, because several times, just as recent as a week ago, there was a truck with cupboards parked right across the sidewalk on Fulton Street. And a member of the community had to go out and ask them to move because the children were going to be coming home within the 10-minute period prior to the 4 o'clock, well, around 3:34 when the buses come. Then today, looking out the window, which I saw one of our neighbors walking down the street with her dog, there was mud on the sidewalk because no one has cleaned the mud off from when the truck was there. And she very guardedly walked across this with her dog. So a lot of us elderly people here. And Fulton Street is a well-used street for dog walking. So I'd like to believe that we can depend on the council to ensure the safety of all of us people on Oak Street. Nobody cleans the mud off the street. Nobody cleans the mud off the road. It all goes into the gentleman's down at the corner who's already upset, but I don't believe that person is going to be submitting anything. So I speak on my behalf, but on behalf of the people that are experiencing the difficulties. I want to thank you for your time, and I'd like to ask you, that if there's anything that you can do or that Mr. Wall can do to ensure the safety and well-being, should this be allowed, that be done. Because if people, I think that people have to be held accountable, especially when we know what's happening. We have to be able to rely on council to know what the dangers are and be able to address them before we allow this to happen. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else wishes to participate? No one else is in the waiting room. Moving on to committee questions and discussion.
Could we just,
Would you like to back up?
just announce the
Well, I did
submission?
announce that we had 3 submissions,
Okay.
but if you wish, we can.
Just for the,
For the record,
For the record.
we've had 3 written submissions, one from Rick and Deb Marlette, submitted on November the 4th in opposition to the application. Another from Bridget Clark Carmichael, submitted on November the 5th in opposition to the application. And the third from Wendy Carmichael, submitted on November the 6th in opposition of the application. Okay. Now, moving on to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions, discussion points?
Cheers.
Committee member Emerson, please.
I think it's commendable that they are intensifying like provincial policy indicates and providing more attainable units. So I'd like to commend them for that. But I guess my question goes to water coming off the driveway, and if we have adequate storm sewers to take away that water, or if there's a grade on the road to ensure it's not on the water. And I think the ice is a valid point, actually, because Oak Street's on a hill and those driveways are quite steep.
Stormwater management is a building issue. Ice buildup on the roads, almost a public safety issue. Where do we draw the line, Mark?
well, if I could, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee, when the semi-detached dwelling was constructed, they had to submit a grading plan. The grading plan was reviewed by the chief building official and our drainage superintendent. Again, a revised site plan, or I'm sorry, grading plan was submitted with site plan when they severed the semi-detached dwelling, which is now 2 individual properties. So the grading plan again had to be reviewed, which it was. There was some engineering involved at the street with catch basins. So I would submit that through the CBO and through our drainage superintendent that those issues have been reviewed and addressed.
All right, thank you for that. That's.
Through Mr. Mayor. Oh, yeah, thank you for the explanation.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion points? Yes, Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I was just wondering, the 54%, is that the minimum that they, or the minimum that it'll take to house the cars that are allowed there? Like if 50% will not accommodate them, is that the issue, or they just want extra room? I don't know who can answer.
Turn that one to Christian.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I can certainly answer that question, Councillor Chilcott. So ultimately, each semi-detached dwelling, so there's, I understand we're currently talking about one of the 2 applications. They are identical. But for this application, semi-detached dwelling requires 2 parking spaces, and an additional residential unit requires 1 parking space. So therefore, a total of 3 are required. And as it stands right now with the current driveway, it wouldn't be able to meet the minimum dimensions required in the zoning bylaw to accommodate those 3 spaces. You would only be able to get 2 spaces currently. So by adding that 4%, which is actually an additional 0.83 meters west of an expansion from the driveway, that will meet the minimum width and dimension for the parking space, thus allowing 3 total parking spaces and meeting the zoning bylaw requirement. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Any additional questions? Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Mark, please.
If I could just add to Christian's comments for a little bit more understanding. The garage counts as one parking space. Just so you visually see it, we're not talking about 3 side-by-side vehicles as being required. The garage counts as one parking space of the 3. Okay.
Thank you for that. All right. Excuse me. We ready for the question? All right. The motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 7824 regarding the 1000038010098 Ontario Inc. minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45.1.1 of the Planning Act and is considered minor, therefore application A 1824 submitted by 10000381098 Ontario Inc. pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456/2003 specifically section 4.34.1 to permit a driveway that occupies a maximum of 54.0% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required. To provide adequate parking for the future additional residential unit on the parcel, which is permitted as of right on the subject lands. I need a mover and seconder for this. Committee member Froese will move. Committee member Chilcott will second. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Minor variance application A 1924, wall, 11 Oak Street. The purpose of this variance is to grant relief from section 4.34.1 to permit a driveway that occupies a maximum of 54.0% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required. The increased driveway width is intended to accommodate the off-street parking requirement for the existing semi-detached dwelling and a future interior additional residential unit. Subject lands are located 11 Oak Street, west side, south of Fulton Street in the village of Vienna. The effect of this variance will be to accommodate a larger driveway to the existing semi-detached dwelling with one future interior additional residential unit that exceeds the maximum front yard coverage requirement. Now we'll entertain the staff report, Report DS 7924 by Marg Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance application A 1924 from 1000038 Ontario Inc. Wall, 11 Oak Street. It's like Groundhog Day around here.
Mhm.
Mark,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chair. Exactly the same as the one before.
Okay.
No, I'll continue trying to be funny, but anyway, 11 Oak is pretty much mirror image of the 9 Oak proposal. So considering the same widening of the driveway to allow for the additional parking space. Again, we're talking about an ARU requiring 1 parking space, so they are needing to have 3. The garage counts as 1. They will have 2 out front. Committee must be satisfied with the 4 tests of the Planning Act. The planner's memorandum is attached, dated October 29th, providing a full analysis of the 4 tests. Municipal planner and staff concur that that the application meets the section 4.34.1 of the zoning bylaw and would permit a driveway that occupies 54%, whereas 50% is required. So I leave it with you, Mr. Chair, to further along the
Thank you
agenda.
very much. As before, I don't believe the applicant is present to make a presentation on this. Now we'll open it up to public submissions and public participation. I would note for the record that there are 2 emails submitted in opposition to the application. One from Bridget Clark Carmichael, submitted on November the 5th, 2024, and the second, Wendy Carmichael, submitted on November the 6th, 2024. Now, is there anyone who wishes to participate publicly on this application? Seeing none. Moving on and open it up to committee questions and discussion. Margaret noted it's a mirror image parcel, very similar, and I would assume that the concerns that were addressed in the previous should be the same. I also want to note that the safety issues that were made in the previous application regarding road safety and things really fall outside the Planning Act. But if there are issues that council wants to address in the future, they can. Okay. Seeing no committee questions or discussion, we'll move on with the decision. The motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 7924 regarding the 100381098 Ontario Inc. minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1)(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor, therefore application A 1924 submitted by 100381098 Ontario Inc. pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from municipality of BAM zoning bylaw Z 456/2003, specifically section 4.34.1 to permit a driveway that occupies a maximum of 54.0% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required to provide adequate parking for the future as additional residential unit on the parcel, which is permitted as of right on the subject lands. We have a mover and seconder for that, please. Committee member Emerson, committee member Froese will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Application C, minor variance application A 2024, Rempel Friesen at 56226 Heritage Line. Purpose of this variance is to grant relief from the following zoning bylaw regulations for the development of a new semi-detached dwelling with one interior additional residential unit on the subject lands identified as 56226 Heritage Line, north side, west of Duke Street in the village of Vienna.
Stratford.
Excuse me, Stratfordville. Thank you. Got Vienna on the brain. Number one, section 4.34.1 to permit a maximum driveway width of 14 meters. That's 7 meters for semi-detached dwelling, whereas 9 meters is the maximum requirement and occupy 68.5% of the front yard, whereas 50% is the maximum requirement. The increased driveway width and coverage is intended to accommodate the off-street parking requirement for the proposed semi-detached dwelling and future interior additional residential unit. Section 10.3 to permit a minimum lot area of 831.0 square meters, whereas 900 square meters is the minimum requirement for partially serviced lots in the village of Stratfordville. Section 10.5 to permit a maximum building height of 8.05 meters, whereas 7 meters is the maximum requirement. The effect of this variance will be to permit an increased maximum driveway width and front yard coverage, reduced minimum lot area, and increased maximum height to accommodate a new semi-detached dwelling with one interior additional residential unit on the vacant subject lands. Ready for the staff report, DS 8024 by Marg Underhill, Secretary Treasurer regarding minor variance A 2024, Rempel Friesen at 56226 Heritage Line. Marg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to the committee, the purpose and effect has been read aloud. The Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied with that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance to the zoning bylaw. The planner's memorandum is dated October the 29th, attached to the report, and it outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and the variances required for compliance. Municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria to grant relief from section 4.34.1 of the zoning bylaw to permit the maximum driveway width of 14 meters and occupy 68.5% of the front yard. And section 10.3 to permit a minimum lot area of 831 square meters. And section 10.5 to permit the maximum building height of 8.05 meters. In addition to that information included in the report, there are the points A through D that the owner would be required to do. Removing the wooden deck, from the existing house, removing the existing driveway and access. And they would have to provide information to the chief building official on the openings in both the existing single detached dwelling and proposed semi-detached dwelling to confirm the limiting distance is adequate for both buildings between the property line. And the owner enters into a limiting distance agreement with the municipality in accordance with the Ontario Building Code. What's happening here is the lot has been split by deed, not through severance, because it is a whole lot on the plan of subdivision or Straffordville. So the existing house is closer to the lot line than what we would normally permit. So because it is an existing situation, they can enter into this limiting distance agreement, which requires certain distance between the new and the old. And that's coordinated through our CBO. So I will leave it with you for further discussion and questions.
Thank you very much. Move on to a presentation by the applicant if they're present. I don't believe they are. I would note there are no written public submissions for this. However, does anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Now's the time. Open it up to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Okay, moving right along then, we'll move into the decision of the committee. Motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 80/24 regarding the Rempel Friesen minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1)(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application A-20/24 submitted by Rami Rempel Friesen pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from the municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456/2003 specifically. Section 4.34.1 to permit a maximum driveway width of 14 meters, whereas 9 meters is the maximum requirement, and occupy 68.5% of the front yard, whereas 50% is required. Section 10.3, permit a minimum lot area of 831.0 square meters, whereas 900 square meters is the required. And section 10.5 to permit a maximum building height of 8.05 meters, whereas 7.0 meters is required, and subject to the following conditions. A, that the owner removes the existing wooden deck encroaching on the subject property. B, that the owner removes the existing driveway and access in accordance with the municipality of Bayham standards currently encroaching on the subject property. C, that the owner provides information to the chief building official on the openings in both the existing single detached dwelling and the proposed semi-detached dwelling to confirm that the limiting distance is adequate for both buildings between the property line. And D, that the owner enters into a limiting distance agreement with the municipality in accordance with the Ontario Building Code, with all costs associated with the agreement at the expense of the owner to address the side yard depth deficiency. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Committee member Emerson will move and committee member Froese will second. All in favor? That's carried. The fourth minor variance application is application A-21/24 Schmidt at 54180 Eden Line. The purpose of this variance is to grant relief from the following zoning bylaw regulations for the development of a new detached garage shop in the rear yard on the subject lands located at 54180 Eden Line, north side, west of Culloden Road in the hamlet of North Hall. 1, section 4.2B to permit a minimum side yard depth of 2.4 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is the minimum requirement from the exterior side lot line in the HR zone. And number 2, section 4.21, permit a private garage on a corner lot that is closer to 6 meters from the street line. The effect of this variance is to permit a reduced minimum side yard depth and distance from the street line for the development of a new detached garage shop in the rear yard of the subject lands. Now entertain the staff presentation Report DS 81/24 by Marg Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance A-2124 Schmidt at 54180 Eden Line. Marg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The purpose and effect of the application has been read aloud. Committee of Adjustment again must be satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance to the zoning bylaw. The planner's memorandum dated October 29th, attached to the report, outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and the variances that are required. Municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria to grant relief from section 4.2B to permit a minimum side yard depth of 2.4 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is the minimum side yard depth and required from the exterior side lot line in the HR zone. The garage is being set back from Eden Line, which is because it's a corner lot. Eden Line is the nearest lot line for the proposed shop. Also, variance to section 4.21 to permit a private garage on a corner lot that is closer than the 6 meters from the street line. So I'll leave it with you, Mr. Chair, for consideration.
Thank you for that. Is anyone here to represent or make a presentation on behalf of this application? Okay. Any public submissions? I note there are no written submissions for this particular application. Does anyone wish to participate publicly in this application? No comments. Open it up to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions? I have one. The map shows that the property is to be accessed from Eden Line, or is that simply for the garage? The Arcadis memorandum suggests that it is accessed from Culloden Road. Which one?
Oh, there would be confusion on that. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. The property actually accesses Eden Line.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Just to let you know I read it.
Hmm.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions regarding this application? Okay. We'll move on then with the decision of the committee. And the proposed memo, or excuse me, motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer Report DS 81/24 regarding the Schmidt minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application A-21/24 submitted by Henry and Katharina Schmidt pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from Municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456/2003, specifically section 4.2B, to permit a minimum side yard depth of 2.4 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is the minimum side yard depth required from the exterior side lot line in the HR zone. Section 4.21 to permit a private garage on a corner lot that is closer than 6 meters from the street line. We have a mover and seconder for that. Committee member Weisler, committee member Chilcott, all in favor. It's carried. And finally, moving on with the 5th application, which is minor variance application A-22/24, GERD at 43 Pitt Street. Purpose of this variance is to grant relief from section 10.6 in the zoning bylaw to permit a maximum building coverage of 32.5%, whereas 30% is required maximum in the R1 zone. The subject lands are located at 43 Pitt Street, north side, east of Victoria Street in the village of Port Burwell. The effect of the variance will be to accommodate an enclosed front yard porch for a new single detached dwelling currently under construction on the subject property that exceeds the maximum permitted building coverage. We'll now have the staff report. That's report DS 82/24 by Marg Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance A-22/24 GERD at 43 Pitt Street. Marg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The purpose and effect has been read aloud. The Committee of Adjustment again must be satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance to the zoning bylaw. Planner's memorandum dated October the 29th, attached to the report, outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and the variances required for compliance. Municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria to grant relief from section 10.6 maximum building coverage to permit a lot coverage of 32.5%, whereas the maximum building coverage is 30%, subject to the following condition: that the owner receives written approval from the Long Point Region Conservation Authority for the proposed single detached dwelling with an enclosed front porch within the LPRCA regulation limit. And I will leave it with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that presentation. Is the applicant or agent present, and do they wish to make a presentation? Seeing none. Is there any public participation? I will note that there are 2 comments. The first is from George Moore, submitted of comments via voicemail on October 30th in support of the applications. And the second from Martin Camper and Joy Freeman, submitted an email on November the 6th, 2024 in support of the application. Okay. Committee questions and discussions. Does anyone have any questions? Moving right along then to the decision of the committee. The motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's report DS 8224 regarding the Schmidt minor variance be received. That's not right. Gerd. You. And that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45.11 of the Planning Act and was considered minor. Therefore, application A-22/24 submitted by David Gerd pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from the Municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw number Z456/2003, specifically section 10.6 maximum building coverage to permit a lot coverage of 32.5%, whereas the maximum building coverage is 30%, subject to the following condition: that the owner receives and provides to the municipality the written approval from the Long Point Region Conservation Authority for the proposed single detached dwelling with an enclosed front porch within the LPRCA regulation limit. We have a mover and seconder for that. Committee member Emerson and committee member Chilcott will second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Brings us to the adjournment motion. That Committee of Adjustment meeting for consideration of minor variance applications A-18/24, A-19/24, A-2024, A-21/24, and A-22/24 be adjourned at 7:08 PM. And that in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act, notices of decision be circulated by the Secretary Treasurer accordingly. Mover and seconder, committee member Weisler and committee member Chilcott will second. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Don't go far. On to the next. Ready? All right. Good evening and welcome to the regular session of council for the municipality of Bayham. It is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. It is 7:09 PM. And I will call this meeting to order. I will remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none. I do not believe there are any items not listed on the agenda this evening. Announcements for the evening. Anyone have any announcements? Councillor Chilcott.
Sorry, I couldn't get it to me unmute. Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have our Remembrance Day services on Sunday, 11 a.m. at the Vienna Park, and the Port Burwell Parade leaves the Legion at 12:45 for services at 1 o'clock at the Cenotaph.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chilcott. I would encourage all that if you have opportunity to take in both or at least one, try to do so. Any other announcements from, yes, Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick reminder that the municipal office is closed next Monday, November the 11th, in observation of Remembrance Day.
All right, thank you for that. Anything else? All right. We have no delegation, so we will move on with section 7, adoption of the minutes of the previous meetings, which include the regular meeting of council held October 17th, 2024, and the drainage public meeting held October 17th, 2024. Everyone's had opportunity to peruse those minutes. If there are no errors or omissions, I will accept a mover and seconder for the following: that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held October the 17th, 2024, and the minutes of the public drainage meeting held October the 17th, 2024, be approved as presented. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Weisler, Councilor Froese, all in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Skipping way down to section 12, development services, sustainability and conservation, 12.1 correspondence, and 12.1.1 to receive for information. Item A, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A-1824 by 1000, there's an extra 0 here. 381098, should be 3 zeros, right? Yes. That's Ontario Inc., Wall 9 Oak Street. B, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A-1924 from 1000381098 Ontario Inc., Wall 11 Oak. Item C, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A-2024 Rempel Friesen at 56226 Heritage Line. D, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A-2124 Schmidt at 54180 Eden Line. And E, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance application A-2224 GERD at 43 Pitt Street. F, notice of public meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2024 Bonnie and Cadman at 13540 Bayham Drive. G, notice of public meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2524 Pettigrew at 6423 Plank Road. H, notice of adoption of regarding the OPA 38 municipality of Bayham. And I, notice of passing of zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2424 municipality of Bayham. Thank God. All right, anyone have any questions on any of those notices? Then the motion would that items 12.1.1A through I be received for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councilor Froese. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have to pass these planning reports until after the public meeting. So let's skip down to section 13, finance and administration, 13.1 correspondence, and 13.1.1 to receive for information. Item A, Whitewater Region regarding the OPP notice of motion for funding support. Item B, Municipality of St. Charles regarding Green Roads Pilot Program. And item C, Municipality of St. Charles regarding asset retirement obligations. Does anyone wish to discuss any of these issues, draw attention to them, or have any questions regarding them? Deputy Mayor Weisler.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a interesting read on A. And I'm curious as to if county has ever had any similar discussions. And yeah, if you had any comments on that, not to put you on the spot.
No,
but
I'd be happy
it's
to,
an interesting read.
I would be happy to respond on behalf of the county. The county has not had any discussions on that, but if you think about it, the county does not pay for police services. It's a local municipal issue.
Yeah, and supplementary through you,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, the reason I asked that is because I know we've had discussions in the past about joining forces with local municipalities. We've done some cost projections as to what it would be like to do local. So it's interesting to kind of throw it back at the province and see, but I'm not convinced that they would ever pick up that torch, but it's just an interesting concept.
It is indeed. And you're right, we have explored partnering with services outside of the OPP, the
Mhm.
current contract. It's obviously we didn't do it, didn't develop, so that there was feasibility to it. Just how far I can go into suggesting it, we know that the new estimates for 2025 are out. Everybody's going up, but I don't believe Bayham is going up as high as perhaps others across the province. And not to say that that's, you know, particularly good, it's just that it's those increases are due to wage settlements. And really, it's kind of beyond our control.
Yeah.
There's nothing precluding us from looking at perhaps going in with some other municipality to look at alternative policing arrangements. I just don't, from an intuitive level, don't see how it is feasible for us, because you'd have to generate infrastructure to take care of them. You would have to, on a major crime issue, still call in the province and still end up with a bill. So is there any advantage at this point? I'm not sure that there is, but still, it's something that we need to be paying attention to moving forward. Any other comments on any of these? I think the one from St. Charles is kind of interesting when they're talking about alternative materials for road building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something that I know our public works people will be keeping an eye on, and see how well that works out and see what the feasibility is of that. So just something for you to do.
Yeah, in your spare time.
In your spare time.
I think the cost is what is interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. See no further questions or comments, then the motion would be that items 13.11A through C be received for information. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson will move that. Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We've still got 12 minutes before we have a public meeting. So let's move on. 13.2 reports to council. Report CAO 4824 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding updated beach risk assessment. Are you ready for this one, Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Megan, I believe Steve Adams is in the room.
Yes, he is.
Okay, thank you very much. So this report comes to council as an updated risk assessment for the Port Burwell East Beach that was completed in September of this year. And this information has been presented at a high level as well to the Waterfront Advisory Committee in October. So as a component of our Blue Flag application, we did provide a risk assessment done by the Life Saving Society to support Blue Flag status. When we were applying in 24, we became aware of the necessity to update the risk assessment for present day beach dynamics and usership. So we have done this. The risk assessment was conducted August and September. Manager of Public Works met on site with representatives of the Life Saving Society on September the 7th to provide context and answer questions. The risk assessment identified 3 different categories of recommendations. They're categorized as primary, recommendations, secondary recommendations, and above those are priority concerns. The descriptions of those are identified in the report. Pleased to say that the risk assessment identified no primary concerns, which would require immediate addressing. However, the report did identify 5 primary recommendations and 5 secondary recommendations, which are summarized in the report in bullet form. The Manager of Public Works has done a lot of work contacting other beaches and contacting various companies to provide the costing, which is appended to the report for these 10 total recommendations. There are significant costs that are associated with the primary ones, specifically the recommendation under a manned or lifeguarded beach and installing a barrier around the pier. Both of these items fall into the ballpark of approximately $200,000 to $250,000. The $250,000 for the lifeguard recommendation would be in and around what is suggested for staffing alone, and Steve will have a little bit of more information on that. But for a context, the $240,000 increase that might apply equates to approximately 3.6% on our tax levy, so it is not an insignificant amount of money. The other main primary recommendation that I want to draw council to is the note regarding disabled access to the waterfront noted by the Life Saving Society. So originally, this was handled by the accessible pad at the beach. And the reason why it was done so and accepted at the time is because our East Beach is dynamic and the shoreline shifts from year to year in varying degrees. So if an installation is done with an accessible mat, for instance, that might not suffice if the shoreline shifts markedly south for a beach season and takes the end of that further away from where the water meets the beach itself. Also worth reiterating that this is in our capital budget as item PR 13 as a 2027 grant contingent item. Worth noting that these recommendations are not mandatory. However, in further discussion with Swim Drink Fish, their staff has advised that Blue Flag International may negatively look upon recommendations, particularly primary recommendations that are not actioned, which may impact any 2025 and or future Blue Flag application for the beach. It may not negatively impact to the point where we lose status for 2025. That would depend on the application going in and any feedback we have coming out, but they may be pushing for certain primary recommendation to be tackled sooner rather than later. And as our 2025-2034 capital budget discussions are upcoming next Wednesday, this information is provided to council to ensure that any direction regarding capital matters in this report can be directed to the upcoming special budget meeting. So given the scope of cost, these recommendations may not be fundable out of the levy, and they may require another revenue source, such as paid beach parking. Just a note that it is expected that this report on beach parking will be forthcoming to council before year end. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will leave it with you and council to discuss. Myself and Mr. Adams are available for questions, and any questions were available.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions? Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we know that they're not, the recommendations are not necessarily mandatory in order for us to reapply for the Blue Flag. But my question is, now that we have this risk assessment, how soon would staff recommend looking into or implementing some of these? You just get the proper wording there, primary recommendations.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, there are some that are relatively small that can be addressed. Most of these are the secondary ones. And those can be ones that are either included as part of other capital projects, if applicable, or done through from an operating perspective. There are some items that are going to require additional staff discussion, and they're going to require discussion at the capital budget because we don't currently have any of these items identified in the draft capital budget. So we would need subsequent motions to then include them. And then we'd have to look at how those are funded. Now, right now, we don't have another funding mechanism for the beach outside of grants reserves in the tax levy. So there are some moving pieces here, which is why we're pushing to get a paid parking report back to council, so council can get a better idea of what we'd be looking at for revenue generation. And we'd be potentially looking at a model through that where council would consider a full user pay system, and then any revenues generated would offset capital needs and operating needs at the beach. We'd have that information to council probably the first meeting in December at this point in time.
All right, thank you for that. Councilor Pros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Did I understand correct, CAO Thomas, that these are not mandatory, these 10 suggestions?
That's our understanding, that they're not mandatory. I mean, we were told back in 2017 to put an accessible pad in. We put an accessible pad in for waterfront access, for instance, and it doesn't get right to the waterfront, but it was satisfactory at the time. Based upon my discussions with our representative at Swim Drink Fish, we've been told that they're not mandatory, but they may negatively impact the application itself. So the only way we're going to know what the outcome of that is if the application goes in and then they review it, and then they'll provide us feedback on what they'd like to see if we want to proceed as a blue flag beach. Now, I would note that the description of what a primary recommendation is they're to address situations that, in the opinion of the Life Saving Society, are either in contravention of relevant province of Ontario statute or the Life Saving Society's position on what constitute reasonable safe practices. So this is important because I gather in discussion there's no legislative contravention. It's more of their level of safe practices that they believe that we're deficient in, and the usership on our beach is far higher than it was back in 2017. And they were out a number of times taking tallies of beach usership. So we're well over the minimum that would require us to have lifeguards at this point in time. And because Blue Flag is very much a beach designation that establishes certain levels of cleanliness and safety, certain components such as the barrier on the pier, for instance, or lifeguard in the beach from a safety perspective might hinder the application. But at this point in time, no, we don't believe them to be mandatory. And if they were mandatory, realistically, there's no way where we're going to fund, $500,000 plus in recommendations for the 2025 season. And then I'd be here with a recommendation that we don't proceed with blue flag status next year, just on the basis of that, because we don't have the funding for it. But at this point in time, I see no reason why we can't apply and see what happens.
Yes,
Pardon you.
Pros. Yeah.
Very well put, actually. I guess I was thinking, what is the value of blue flag to Bayham, right? And the part 3 is, I will guarantee you 100% of the people in Bayham do not want another 3.5% on the 3.6% on the levy for something that potentially does not add value, right?
Mhm.
Thank you for those comments, Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. When we accept these as risk assessments as information, what are we exposing ourselves to if we don't implement these recommendations? Regardless of the blue flag status, like if we're recognizing or accepting this report stating that we should have lifeguards, and there's something that happens down at our beach, are we at risk from a municipal perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, the Deputy Mayor. I'll also let Steve jump in a little bit on this one too, because he's been asking around to some of the other municipal beaches around Ontario, and a number of them don't have lifeguards, and they're far bigger than Burwell's is. They just don't have blue flag status. What it comes down to is owner's liability for the most part. And it becomes at-risk beach usership. We don't have the ability in our current funding structure to fund lifeguards. And if the recommendation from a safety perspective is that we should have it for blue flag, I mean, it's kind of what I've outlined already. We can apply for it and see what they recommend and see if they're adamant that we need it for 26, for instance, or we need it for 25, or, we just don't apply in the future and it becomes a use at your own risk beach with a similar level of service. And I see Steve's at the podium, so if he has any more information on that, I'll pass over to him.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, through your worship. Just to add, yes, I talked to more than a dozen municipalities with beaches. There's not a lot that have lifeguards, but one of the questions I asked everyone was if there was a fatality at the beach
Mhm.
and if the lifeguards were on duty at the time. And there were 3 that I talked to that have had fatalities at the beach. And the question I had was, what did the lifeguards, not what the lifeguards prevent, but when it came to any lawsuits, there was only one case that the courts, it wasn't anything to do with the lifeguards. It wasn't anything to do, it was signage.
Ah,
The signage at the beach, they were found insufficient. And that is those simple,
Hmm.
no lifeguard on duty. If there's a lifeguard on duty, is what actually happened in this case is it was after hours. However, the lifeguards were on the beach and they, with 2 different people, they happened to save one and the other one didn't. But they found like it was insufficient, the people, and they took it to court. So at this point, I couldn't get a straight answer from anyone insurance wise. There was no change along that line with the lifeguard. So at this point, we have no outstanding information that would really say that, yeah, like Thomas said, that it's a mandatory requirement or, you know,
Hmm.
on our premiums, does it make a difference? Until this happens, we're not gonna know, unfortunately.
Okay,
Okay.
we are straying into a public meeting.
Oh, we got,
Can we wrap this up fairly quick, or we can
Just one
suspend
quick
and come
question.
back? We can suspend and come back. if
Well, it's
that's
up to you, but I just have one quick question.
And Susan's got a question too. So maybe what we should do is suspend and then we'll come back. It's 7:31 already. Apologize for that.
That's all right.
So we're recessing from our regular agenda, moving into a statutory planning meeting. And I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:31 PM. And remind members of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. This public planning meeting deals with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2024 Bonnie and Cadman at 13540 Bayham Drive. The purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from agricultural A1 zone to a site-specific agricultural A1 XX zone to facilitate the development of a detached accessory building, a pool house, containing an additional residential unit, seeking relief from the following provisions. Section 4.2 F2. Permit an accessory building with a maximum floor area of 385.4 square meters. That's 4,148.0 square feet. Whereas 200 square meters or 2,152.8 square feet is the maximum requirement on the A1 zone lots measuring 0.4 hectares or more. Section 4.559.E. To permit an additional residential unit with a maximum gross floor area that is 57.1%. That's 144.4 square meters or 1,553.9 square feet in size of the primary dwelling unit, 253.1 square meters or 2,724.0 square feet in size, whereas 40%, that's 101.2 square meters or 1,089.7 square feet is the maximum requirement. The subject property is known as 13540 Bayham Drive, east side, south of Talbot Line Highway 3. The effect of this bylaw is to facilitate the development of an oversized detached accessory building, a pool house, that exceeds the maximum permitted floor area, as well as an oversized ARU that exceeds the maximum permitted gross floor area requirement. And at this point, we will call for any public participation regarding this application. So anyone who wishes to speak on this proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you will now attend the podium, sign in, and have your say. Anyone wish to speak to this application? Do you wish to speak to it? Come on up to the microphone and sign in and state your name and
Good evening. My name is Henry Dahl, and
Mhm.
this particular project was actually a former project manager that has since taken another job. So this was before the council,
Right.
and that his name was Hayden Diamond. And now my son is taking over that project, that's taking care of it. He was working on, did all the planning and stuff anyways. So if you get any questions, then he can clarify it. But like we went in the meantime, we understood, that's what I understood from Hayden, that this was already approved, subject to Long Point approval. So in order to get Long Point approval, we had to do a topo, we had to do a slope thing, and that took some time. And in the meantime, I guess you guys changed the bylaw. That's what I understand. So now we are here again for basically the same thing.
All right.
So we got everything, and if there's any questions, then my son is well versed, better than myself, but.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Anyone else wishing to speak on this particular application? Okay. I would note there is no correspondence with this application. I don't believe there's any other business with this application. Which brings us to the adjournment for this application. That the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the second public meeting for zoning application ZBA 2024 is now complete at 7:36 PM. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Emerson. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on with the second public meeting, I will call this meeting to order at 7:37 PM. I'll remind members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. This proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 25/24 Pettigrew at 6423 Plank Road. The purpose of the bylaw is to facilitate the removal of the H2 holding provision on the lands located at 6423 Plank Road, west side and south of Old Mill Line in the Village of Vienna, as part of the clearing of consent conditions for Elgin County Land Division Committee, file number E 53-23, that was conditionally approved on August the 23rd, 2023. The subject property, specifically the proposed severed lot, is to be zoned from the holding village residential R1, that's the R1H2 zone, to village residential 1R1 zone in the municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456/2003. The effect of this bylaw will be to satisfy the conditions of approval of Elgin Land Division Committee, file number E 53-23, that was conditionally approved on August the 23rd, 2023. And at this point, I will call for any public participation on this application. Does anyone wish to speak on this application? Okay. Seeing no takers for that, I would note that there is no correspondence with this application. I don't believe we have any other business with this application, which brings us to the adjournment. With the motion that zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 25-24/24, that is now complete at 7:39 PM. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weiser, Councillor Froese. All in favor? Carry. We're adjourned. Which brings us back to our regular schedule. And we left off at 13.2. That's the updated beach risk assessment. And I believe Councillor Emerson, you had a question.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
The question is, since this is brought to light with these primary recommendations, and I just want to make sure that our signage is adequate for any liability things. I suppose, I'm sure Steve has probably done that already, but would like to know.
I agree with you on that one. And I'm thinking when you look at the cost analysis of what is here and will be coming, I believe, to the capital budget, these are some things that we can do to mitigate the risks to the municipality. Rather than when we start looking at some of these enhanced, 150,000, 250,000 plus 40,000 for lifeguard stations and all that kind of thing. Steve, do you wish to make a
Yeah,
comment on that?
just to clarify on those items. So pretty much everything other than the lifeguards and the barriers will be dealt with in the 2025 season. Additional signage on the pier for the ladders getting in and out of the water. The signage on the beach is what they're referring to by those, is we didn't double side them. We only have one angle. So, and then a larger sign by the phone, emergency phone. Those will all be handled through operating costs. I replace more signage than that a year anyways, so it'll all get put in with that cost. And then the buoy on the beach, I usually replace 2 every year anyways, so that's this year the ones we pulled out actually turned out to last most of the year other than the one. So we're gonna we'll replace one and that's it.
Okay, Councilor Emerson,
Supplementary.
Come on.
coming to you, Councilor Chilcott, shortly.
I guess too, if we accept, say we move to that next level somewhere in the future, lifeguard and patrolled waterfront, does that put us in a whole new world of hurt with liability insurance too, because we're accepting the risk now and providing service?
I'm going to look for some clarification from both Steve and Thomas on this one. My understanding, listening to the earlier discussion on it, is it doesn't put us in a worse position, but it doesn't improve our position. I don't believe.
Right, I think through your worship, talking to, I think the liability, to be honest, would actually come with the staff, period. The staff and the equipment. Like Mr. Mayor said, the actual liability, it doesn't seem that any cases out there right now where there's been additional, but the liability that you will have with additional 20 staff on the payroll and the equipment obviously is going to affect our premiums that way. So it's kind of a twofold that way. However, that'd be any department. So Thomas may have more on that.
Yeah, Thomas, do you have any comment to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Adams covered it fairly well. It doesn't, what we're saying at this point in time is it doesn't either increase nor decrease our liability. The premium impact would be the additional staff, the additional capital and materials. All of that would have to be covered. That would increase our overall asset portfolio, and that would have a premium impact.
Okay, so just to clarify, our exposure shouldn't change, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But if we increase staff, our premiums will change.
I get, it just seems like if we are providing experts and they weren't, say, for example, they weren't experts,
Oh, yeah.
right? Then, someone not trained or someone chokes or something, I would think that would be a weak spot as far as lawsuits go or something.
Quite possibly, yes.
Mm.
I would agree.
Just a little onto that one. It's a good point. I'm talking to the lifeguard that day, and with these other with the drownings that are out there, something they brought up to me is the drownings that are out there, the lifeguards per year in Ontario that actually save from drownings is very, very minimal. They end up being first aiders, because the problem with the drownings on the beach and actual water rescues is parents are turning their heads on the kids, and the time they realize the kids are gone, it's too late for the lifeguards to actually reach them. And that's where, like, the training and that was a big thing. Inlets with harbors moving fast moving water, they become that was a big priority for lifeguards. So it is based, I think, on where you are. But it was interesting to hear how many people are actually saved by lifeguards. There's actually not a lot of cases out there, because chances are the water was rough or the kid went out too far. However, if they're observing, the water, if the kid floats away on a boat, they might be a first responder at that case. So it is a very interesting, but they're there. And like the little items I had on my sheet there with the first aid items, that is their number one thing, is they become first aiders on the beach. They really do.
Hmm.
So there's a lot there to think about.
Counselor Chilcott, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, maybe not so patiently, but I had 3 questions before the break and now I can only remember 2 of them. So the one was the lifeguarding and patrolled waterfront. Is that 2 separate things, patrolled by a boat in the outer area and lifeguards on the beach? Is it an either or is it just kind of a grouped wording? And 2, is there something we can do? Like, did they give any other recommendations that we could do in lieu of these items, like perhaps a roped off swimming area to tell people how far out they're going and kind of be mindful of that? So, young children don't go too far and get in over their heads or anything like that that would help mitigate any issues that we might have.
Thank you for the question. I'll defer the second one to Steve. I'll put a little bit of thought into that one because I have some ideas. But for the first question, lifeguarded / patrolled waterfront is meant to be, it's a lifeguarded waterfront. There's no water patrol or anything like that. It's everything is based off land. For what could be done, such as, a roped off or, a smaller swimming area, drownings can occur in very, very small amounts of water. So my understanding is that a smaller swimming area isn't going to change the recommendation for a patrolled waterfront. That's still going to be something that we're going to have to be considering as part of their primary recommendations. But if Steve has any further information on that, then I'll defer to him.
I think you kind of got that one there, Thomas. Port Burwell Beach used to actually have a roped off buoy area.
Mhm.
However, the recommendation in 2017 is what we're doing today. If you've ever been out in our beach, you'd know that it changes all the time and the depth. And that was the problem when I started with the buoys that we put out there, is sometimes they're in 2 feet of water and sometimes they're in 4 feet of water.
Hmm.
So it became an operational challenge and it's very difficult to move them year after year or month after month just because of how they're anchored. So that is a tricky one with our beach. Some beaches I think are a little bit different. Just as an example, when I quoted the Moby mats in my report last year, to date, that was quoted for 90 meters. Currently, we have 125 meters of beach out there. So
Yeah.
the difference even in that in cost, that went from 35,000 last year to 50,000 today without updating the prices. So that's the only thing. It changes very fast out there. Every storm brings in sand, moves sand. So I think the buoys is a very, very difficult. We've internal staff thought about that, wondered if it would actually work any different. However, people really don't. If they want to go in 3 feet of water, then they're going to go in the 3 feet of water.
Mm.
All we can do is try keeping the boat traffic out of the swim area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. The signage moving forward, if we're going to try and mitigate and make sure that we have proper signage, I do think we're gonna have to have a serious look at the amount of signage that's down there. Because it is so busy down there, you're gonna lose some of these really important notifications and there's just so much. So I'm not sure how we're going to fix that. But yeah, I'm not opposed to adding the signage, but my goodness, there's already so much down there already.
Yeah, through your worship, that's absolutely the case. There is a ton of signage.
Yeah.
Additionally, we talked about our large no lifeguard, emergency signs, those 4 signs that are identified, they had absolutely no problem. They said that the coverage of our beach, the meters a part of them signs was perfect, which was recommended in, we just went off their old recommendation. Along with the pier, the line on the pier, that was the first recommendation. Nothing's really changed that way. So it's interesting now to see that they would like railings on the pier. However, the line was added in 2018. It gets painted every 2 years usually as necessary. And so it's one of those things.
We're just going to add really quickly to Mr. Adams' comment that, if we're looking at refining what our signage looks like on the beach to streamline it or to improve it in some ways, then there might be a way to condense some of the existing signage so we don't have so many little signs across the entirety of the beach. Maybe we have the ability to condense where the signage is located in a similar way that we have with, some of the regulatory signage down there and the no lifeguard signs and that sort of thing.
Okay, anything further from members of council? Okay, thank you both for that report. The motion reads that report CAO 48/24 regarding updated beach risk assessment be received for information, and that any discussion regarding East Beach and or pier capital or operating items be directed to the appropriate special budget meeting. We have a mover, Councillor Emerson, and I think seconder is Deputy Mayor Weiser. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We've got 9 minutes. Marg, can we go to your report next? We got time? We got a break coming. Well, actually, if she's quick, we can have a real quick break. All right, Marg, 12.2 reports to council, report DS 83/24 by Margaret Underhill, planning coordinator, deputy clerk regarding rezoning application ZBA 2024 Bonnie and Cadman at 13540 Bayham Drive.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to council. So the report before you is regarding a rezoning application submitted by appointed agent Claudius Dom on behalf of the owners Dana Cadman and Brian Bonney. The application is for rezoning of their property at 13540 Bayham Drive. The purpose of the bylaw, they are rezoning the subject property from agricultural A1 to a site-specific agricultural A149 to permit the development of a detached accessory building pool house containing an ARU. The section looking for relief from sections 4.2F, .2 to permit an accessory building with a maximum floor area of 385.4 square meters, whereas 200 square meters is the maximum requirement on an A1 zone lot measuring 0.4 hectares or more. Also, section 4.59E to permit an additional residential unit with a maximum gross floor area that is 57.1% of the primary dwelling unit, whereas 40% is the maximum requirement. The effect of the bylaws to facilitate the development of an oversized detached accessory building, a pool house that exceeds the maximum permitted floor area, as well as an oversized ARU that exceeds the maximum permitted gross floor area requirement. The first public meeting was held on August the 15th, 2024. We had a second public meeting this evening. There's been no attendees, no oral or written comment received. Following the public meeting, the first public meeting, municipal staff advised the applicants that the LPRCA needed to be consulted. Their comments were required as part of the review before staff could move the application forward. Staff could support in principle to establish the use. However, section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement was addressed by the LPRCA. Staff could not support the application to move it forward until that time. With the recent passing of our housekeeping zoning bylaws, Z 789/2024, we did change some of the regulations for the ARUs in section 4.59. And with those modifications and those changes, it did warrant the second public meeting that we held tonight. We had to recirculate notifying of the new section numbers. So the attached planner's memorandum dated October 29th provides a full analysis of the application. Staff and planner concur the rezoning meets the policies and recommends approval to rezone the property to permit the development of the detached accessory building, the pool house containing an ARU, and they're seeking relief from the sections noted in the background section of this report and contained within the recommendation. I leave it with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that report. Does anyone have any questions? Any concerns? Must have did a good job. All right, we have a proposed motion before us that reads, a report DS-83/24 regarding the Bonnie Cadman rezoning application ZBA 2024 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73, Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meetings held August the 15th, 2024, and November the 6th, 2024, associated with this application, there were no attendees and no oral or written submissions received regarding this matter. Clarification point for you at this point, Mark. Though Mr. Dom did make a comment, is that considered an oral presentation?
Not from public. Henry Dom is part
Thank
of the
you.
agent.
Okay, thanks
Yes.
for that. And that all considerations were taken into account in council decision passing this resolution. And that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located in concession 10 and 11, part lots 21 and 22 at 13540 Bayham Drive from agricultural A1 zone to site-specific agricultural A1-49 zone to permit the development of a detached accessory building, a pool house, containing an ARU, seeking relief from the following provisions. Section 4.2.f2 to permit an accessory building with a maximum floor area of 385.4 square meters. That's 4,148 square feet, whereas 200 square meters, 2,152.8 square feet is the maximum requirement on an A1 zone lots measuring 0.4 hectares or more. Section 4.59E to permit an additional residential unit with a maximum gross floor area that is 57.1%, 144.4 square meters or 1,553.9 square feet in size of the primary dwelling unit, 253.1 square meters or 2,224. Do that again, 2,724 square feet in size, whereas 40%, 101.2 square meters or 1,089.7 square feet is the maximum requirement. And that zoning bylaw number Z 794/2024 be presented to council for enactment. Need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Emerson will move. Councillor Feroz will second. All in favor? Carried. And I don't believe we have time to move into the second public meeting. We do have a drainage quarter revision coming up at 8. Quick break. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the quarter revision. It is November the 6th, 2024, 8:01 PM, and I will call this meeting to order. I'll remind the court of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. This evening, we're dealing with the North Street Drain Notice of Quarter Revision pursuant to Chapter D 17, Section 41 of the Drainage Act. The purpose of the court revision is to provide an opportunity for any person or body entitled to receive notice to appeal their assessment as per engineer's report number 224032, dated September the 20th, 2024, as prepared by Spreet Associates. At this time, we will entertain a staff presentation through report DR 1324 by Steve Adams, Manager of Public Works, the Drainage Superintendent, regarding the North Street Drain Court of Revision. Good evening, Steve.
Thank you. So yes, as you're aware, this petition was signed on December 20th and again signed by additional landowner on March 6th, 2024. This came before council, and on January 18th and appointed Spreets at that time, which in August, we had a preliminary meeting regarding, the design and the assessment in front of, all landowners were invited at that time. And then this report was filed September 24th, 2024. Council then considered the report on October 3rd, which passed the first and second reading of the bylaw. So tonight, we're here at the court to hear all appeals on the assessment of this report. Municipal clerk was to receive 10 days prior any appeals, and as of today, there was none written notices. And if the court would like to hear members of the public, they would have to do so by resolution. Now the decisions made to the court are only here for the schedule of the assessments before you, and any changes that are made to the assessment, the property owners affected have to be within the meeting tonight. And if not, the court will have to adjourn to a second meeting, so the clerk can provide notice to the landowners. And then all decisions that are made tonight can still be appealed to the Agriculture, Food and Rural Appeal Tribunal. There's within 21 days of tonight's meeting. Okay, our municipal engineer is online if there's any questions about the assessment. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, Steve, I assume by this point we are opening it up to public participation. Are there any affected landowners in the room who wish to participate or online? And I'm seeing none. Which then moves us into disposition. Okay. Excuse me. Proposed motion reads the report DR 1324 regarding the North Street Drain Quarter Revision be received for information. And that the Quarter Revision acknowledged that no appeals have been received with respect to the North Street Drain assessments outlined in Engineers Report number 224032. And that Engineers Report number 224032 dated September the 20th, 2024 for the North Street Drain be adopted as presented. And that corresponding bylaw number 2024-062 be presented to council for a third and final reading. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Emerson, Councillor Froese will second that. They'd be jurors. All in favor? Carried. Moves us to the adjournment that the quarter revision for the North Street Drain be adjourned at 8:05 PM. Mover and seconder, please. We'll take Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? We are carried and adjourned. Thanks for coming out, John. Good to see you.
Thank you. See ya.
Okay, returning to our regular agenda. We left off at 12.2, item B, report DS 8424 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 2524. Pettigrew. Mark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. The report before you is regarding a rezoning application submitted by appointed agent Courtney Sinclair of Learners on behalf of Randall and Deborah Pettigrew, looking to rezone their property municipally known as 6423 Plank Road in the village of Vienna. The purpose of the bylaws to facilitate the removal of the H2 holding provision on the lands. And the rezoning is a condition of Elgin Land Division Committee file number E53-23 that was conditionally approved on August the 23rd, 2023. The effect of the bylaws to satisfy the condition of the consent and move the application to its completion with all the conditions satisfied. Public meeting was held this evening, November the 6th, with no public comments. As required through the condition of consent, the applicants have installed the municipal water and sanitary sewer to the existing dwelling on the severed parcel. With the services in place, the holding provision may be removed to satisfy the zoning condition. The purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw amendment is for the removal of the holding provision, and the notice was circulated on October the 18th. The bylaw is prepared for the application and attached to this report. Further, no members of the public can appeal a holding provision, as only the applicant is able to appeal if council refuses or does not make a decision within a specified time frame. Staff and planner are supportive of the purpose and the effect of the zoning amendment and recommend bylaw approval, and it's before you for consideration.
Thank you, Mark, for that report. Does anyone have any questions or concerns regarding this application? Seeing no questions, we have a proposed motion that reads report DS-8424 regarding the Pettigrew rezoning application be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held November the 6th, 2024, associated with this application, there were no written submissions and no oral presentations regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution. And that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on the lands owned by Randall and Deborah Pettigrew, identified as 6423 Plank Road, from Holding Village Residential, that's R1H2, to Village Residential R1 zone. And that zoning bylaw number Z 793/2024 be presented to council for enactment. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councilor Froese will move, Councilor Chilcott will second. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Mark. Moving down to 13.2, reports to council, item B, CAO, report CAO 4924 by Thomas Thayer, CAO regarding the municipal access agreements, Explore Inc. and Explore Fiber LP. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is similar to ones that have been brought forward in previous years for North Frontenac and for Execulink as well. We were engaged in May of 2023 originally by Explore through the Accelerated High-Speed Internet Program. They have been awarded rural fiber installation across Elgin County, Chatham-Kent, and much of southwestern Ontario as part of that program. So we're looking to enter into agreements with them, two of their entities, to provide rural fiber installation in BAM. Based upon discussions with Explore and with our senior staff, they did note that the majority of their installs would actually be aerial, so they'd be pole installations, but they would still require a municipal access agreement. only approximately 30% would be in ground, requiring significant permitting by the municipality to ensure no impacts to municipal infrastructure or drainage. Council has provided some negotiation input via closed report CAO 1824. Much of this has been incorporated into the municipal access agreements, which are attached to this report. It's worth noting that two agreements are being entered into because of the nature of Explorer legal entities, and they are barred from taking on joint and several liabilities. So contract admin is being done via two separate agreements, similar to the way Elgin County has handled this file. The topic of securities arose during discussions. So the attached MMAs contain security provisions that are in conformance with the CRTC jurisprudence on this type of file. The onus would be on the vendor to rectify a deficiency identified by the municipality. And it also provides for a letter of credit of $10,000 only after a second default on a project, rather than being provided at the outset of the agreement. This has gone through much legal review and they are satisfied with the content and scope. It is worth noting that authorizing bylaws will be forthcoming at a later meeting, but under the Building Broadband Faster Act, the municipality is required to work in good faith toward the installation of these broadband projects. Under Section 5.1 of OREG 436/2022, a municipality cannot require an MA for broadband installations. However, where a municipality does request one and an installer is willing to enter into an agreement in good faith and work productively and reasonably towards an agreement, installations may be permitted and conducted in the interim, with the understanding that access agreements will be forthcoming. In this regard, Explore has already commenced permitted works in the northern areas of rural BAM. And these have been reviewed by municipal public works staff to ensure that they do not detriment to existing municipal infrastructure. So with that, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is to direct that the appropriate bylaws to enter into these agreements be brought forward for council's consideration, and I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you for that report. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Froese.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, but a comment. NFTC, we signed the same thing with them. They promised fiber optic across Bayham. They only did it where it suited them and was feasible for them. I'm wondering if this one is going to be any different. There's large areas that still don't have fiber optic in Bayham.
Yeah.
Clarification, just to follow up the councilor's question. So North Frontenac, their installation was meant to be down 19 only. So from Eden to Burwell, and then across to Richmond. They were not doing installation in rural BAM. They were tackling main thoroughfares on 19 and 38. We did also have in 2022 installation up in the Northwest, up in Corinth and North Hall through ExecuLink, and they were very forthcoming with their installation. That actually, they did their installation in a couple of months. At this point in time, given timelines and what we've heard, we don't expect there to be major issues with Explorer's installation, but with the caveat that they do have a substantial geographic area that they're going to be doing installations. It's good to see that they're already working in BAM, and we hope that continues.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? But more to your point, Councilor Froese, yes, there was a significant area of the hinterland, so we say, that was left under service. This is the attempt at the end of mile provision, so the government can claim they're hitting the 2025 target. I will note that there's been conduit that has been installed along Howie. They've been down Maple Grove so far. Let's hope they hit the rest of the areas. Yeah, there's no fiber yet, but it's just a conduit's been put in place.
Highly doubtful.
Yeah,
Let's approve the damn thing.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Any other comments or concerns? I think we'll take that as a motion to let's just do that one. So move by Councilor Froese that report CAO 4924 by Municipal Access Agreements, Explore Inc. and Explore Fiber LP be received for information, and that the appropriate bylaws be entered, bylaws to enter into municipal access agreements with Explore Inc., and Explore Fiber LP be brought forward for council's consideration. I need a seconder for that.
I'll second. Sorry.
I think Deputy Mayor Weiser wants to second that one.
Hilarious.
Seems somewhat historic. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you for that. That was.
Oh, boy.
While council or the municipality isn't holding this one up. How's that? All right, section 14 bylaws. We have two. Bylaw number Z 793/2024 as amended, Pettigrew. And bylaw number Z 794/2024, Bonnie and Cadman. So any question on the bylaws? Otherwise, a mover and seconder for the following, that bylaws numbers Z 793/2024, Z 794/2024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Deputy Mayor Weiser. Councillor Emerson. All in favor? It's carried. We are moving down to section 16, other business. We have the draft minutes of the Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting held on October the 21st, 2024. And I assume we're going to deal with them all under the same motion. So we have the draft minutes of the Museum Advisory Committee meeting held on October 23rd, 2024. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding any of these meeting minutes? Okay. I know it's a busy time for everyone, but the next meeting, I believe, of these committees is in January. If anyone, you're welcome to attend these meetings. They are open. So. The motion reads then that the draft minutes of the Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting held October the 21st, 2024, and the draft minutes of the Museum Advisory Committee meeting held October the 23rd, 2024 be received for information. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor. Councilor Emerson. All in favor? That's carried. We do not have any in-camera provisions for the evening, so we have the confirming bylaw. So a mover and seconder for the following, that confirming bylaw number 2024-066 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weiser. Councilor Emerson will second. All in favor? We are carried and brings us to the adjournment. Moved by Councilor Froese that the meeting be adjourned at 8:19 p.m. Seconder? Councilor Chilcott. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. We are adjourned. And again, please, if you're available, take an opportunity to attend one of the Remembrance Day celebrations throughout the community. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.